Whether it's Massachusetts, California, Texas, or even China or Brazil, there's one treat that I can always find: the egg tart. So, how did it become such a widespread food? Long before the Hong Kong variety, the British had their custard tarts and the Portuguese had their pastéis de nata. They were introduced to China through Guangzhou, which was an international trade center. It was a main outlet for tea, spices, handcrafted goods, and more. The Portuguese first arrived in 1517, and they were the first Europeans to come to China. The Portuguese wanted to engage in the lucrative trade, but the Emperor of Ming Dynasty China was not interested in more foreign trade and did not want to engage with the Portuguese, but ultimately, after some debate, they decided to open up their borders. In the 17th century, the British saw how well the Portuguese were doing in Chinese trade, and they decided to follow suit. Again, China was against engaging with them, so the British tried to trade with them by force, which resulted in the destruction of a Chinese fort. This obviously failed and soured the relations between the two countries, and instead they had to trade through Britain's East India Company. In China, only the rich merchants and traders could enjoy the English and Portuguese egg tarts. This was because only the rich had access to personal foreign chefs or foreign restaurants. However, some Chinese chefs worked alongside the foreign chefs and applied techniques involved in Chinese cooking to the Western dishes. This would result in the creation of Cantonese-style egg tarts, which resembled many dim sum dishes and eventually became one. In 1945, after World War II, the egg custard tart finally moved to Hong Kong, which was a British colony at the time. In the 1960s, cha chang tengs, or Hong Kong-style cafes or tea restaurants, began selling them cheaply and casually, and they became popular among the working class. Due to intense competition between restaurants and stores, Chinese chefs had to simplify the recipe to make it easy and cheap to sell. They used a short crust casing instead of a flaky pastry, and thus the Hong Kong style was born. In the 1980s, Chinese immigrants brought the egg tarts with them to the US. They can be found in Asian bakeries and grocery stores across the country now. The history of the egg tart shows, although China was initially against engaging in Western cultures, they soon came to embrace them. Food is not only a great tool for building connections between individuals, but also it can be used to strengthen relationships between countries. So, how do we make Hong Kong-style egg tarts?
I'll be buying the ingredients at Costco.
You'll need eggs, granulated sugar, powdered sugar, half and half, which they were out of, vanilla extract, butter, and all-purpose flour or cake flour. To make the egg custard tarts, you have to start with the dough for the short crust casing. For the dough, you'll need vanilla extract, 1 tablespoon of egg yolk, cake flour, salt, butter, and powdered sugar. You'll have to separate the egg yolks from the egg whites. I just use my hands, but you could always use a water bottle or the eggshells. Next, combine the flour and powdered sugar together through a sifter. First, 1 cup of cake flour, then 1/4 cup of powdered sugar. And then just sift until combined. You'll want to cube the butter to make it easier to mix into the flour. Just using your hands, mesh the butter into the flour, like this. In real time, this took about 5 minutes. Once it looks like this, you're ready to move on to the next step. Next, you want to add some salt, vanilla extract, and 1 tablespoon of egg yolk. Once all the ingredients are in the bowl, you're going to knead until it forms a cohesive ball. Once it's formed a solid ball, take some plastic wrap and leave it in the fridge for 30 to... While waiting for the dough to rest, you want to start on the egg custard filling. A measuring cup to the 2/3 line with hot water. Add 3 tablespoons of white sugar and mix to dissolve. The leftover egg yolk. And finally, 1/4 cup of half and half. Preheat your oven to 400 degrees Fahrenheit. Then take off small chunks from your dough and roll them into balls. Flap them a little bit into a cylinder shape, and then use your thumbs to press them into the tart shape. Once you've finished lining all of the tins, take your egg custard filling and start pouring one by one. You don't want to pour all the way. Bake for 15 to 20 minutes.
Ooh, sizzle.
After it's cooled for 30 minutes, you can take it out with a knife.
Gorgeous.
And there you have it, Hong Kong style egg custard tarts.